Okay, I am starting this meeting of the Durham Housing Task Force, Monday, May 12th. We have two individuals of our team on Zoom. We have Eileen Murphy and Michael Saputo. We don't have a quorum of 5 in the room, so we are hoping that someone else does show up here. We need Heather, I think.
Oh, Heather and Michael Mulhern cannot make it.
Okay, so we won't have a quorum inside the room.
I guess that's it.
We're this close.
But we will have an informal discussion.
But we won't be advancing anything on today anyways, because we need to still have some thoughts about this. So we will begin that, and I will take roll call for those people that are in Zoom and those that are in the room. So if we could have our on Zoom individuals state who they are, that would be great. Starting with Eileen.
Eileen Murphy.
And
can you hear me? Michael Saputo.
okay, we can hear you. Great. All right, and then Judah Spain.
Paul Rasmussen.
Michael Barron, town planner. Heather Grant and Mike Mulhern cannot make it.
Sally Tobias.
Al Holland.
Okay. All right, so we did the roll call. So we don't really, since we don't have a quorum, we're not going to be doing any approval of agendas or any of the public comments or minutes, since we don't have a quorum in the room. Michael, who would we contact about what facilitates a quorum for this particular group if we wanted to change it? 5 is sometimes a reach.
I don't think we have any documents like bylaws, and the charge doesn't
state it.
Ask New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could
Just make it for.
modify the charge to make it 50%.
Because we often have
We have to
50%.
have a quorum?
We often have
Well, to make
50%.
it, to make any.
Yeah, I think they're going to
decisions.
say you got to be 51, but nonetheless,
Oh.
I would ask New Hampshire Municipal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are just a task force. We'll see. Okay, maybe you could find that out.
Yeah.
No, anyway. All right, so why don't we start with, Al, you have some information to share with us, or?
I do, I can,
Why
yeah.
don't we start with that? You can fill in everybody in what's going on at the state level.
All right, so I should have typed all this up, but I have not. So we did last Tuesday, we exec'd 9 bills. We had 12 come from the Senate, and it was kind of a block that we pushed through. I think I got emails from town staff that said they were against literally everything that was forward. I think that wasn't helpful. So when I look at them, the one that did hit us, and I was just talking to Jay Goose about it, which is Senate Bill 170, which is relative to development related requirements in cities and municipalities. I think this term, one of the themes has been there's a big pushback on municipalities being extreme in zoning, and I think that it's the extreme cases are driving legislation, which is not a good idea. But in this case, 170 at its core was saying things they did not want municipalities to do. And there it was like water and sewer could not exceed state requirements. And that is a theme, that you can't be more stringent than state requirements. But added into there was making students a protected class. So you can't use student enrollment as a mechanism for not allowing a type of housing. And I think we spent a lot of time rushing to get the student lodging house definition in and where they could be allowed. And so I think for us, what that really means is that lodging houses are just lodging houses. They're not, you can't say they're student lodging houses, and that's fine. And they would be allowed in the zones that we already had. And I think when we put together the legislation, that was always the intent. While it did say students, we figured anybody could live there, and now lodging houses are just lodging houses. And so that will need to be changed. And I think that's the right way to do it anyway, because as we put that together, one of the problems that we had was the verification of a student enrollment, particularly for 12 hours, which I think personally, especially the Liberty Alliance I work with periodically, are against. And that's like you're digging into a student's private records to find out their enrollment, which I don't think is the right way to do this at all. So, and it was, UNH was telling us no. So for us, it just means that we're going to say lodging houses are lodging houses by definition, and they're going to be allowed in these 3 zones, and they're not allowed in the other zones. So it's not really a big deal for us.
Okay, so we can just define lodging houses, and then we just, they're
Yes,
here, they
yes.
can be here, but they can't be there.
Yes, yeah, and then the other thing in there, and I think you pointed out to at the very end of 170, is like when you guys go through conceptual review, when you get to the end,
Initial review.
Initial review, they call it. When you get to the end of that, you have 7 days to tell the applicant that there are major changes that you think, or significant changes that you're going to make to for their application to go through. And after that point, then it really becomes, you're just judging the you either say yes or no to the application. You can't do, once they get in to you're evaluating their application, you cannot say, you know what, if you just move this 30 feet.
So the guy you were talking about, who
Yeah,
ran the first session, was on Ask for the Panel,
Yeah,
and during session 4, and he brought this up.
he did.
His comments on this were, it pretty much rips apart all of 673, all
Yeah.
of RSA 673, and throws and rips it to pieces. And it also, he pointed out that it does not define what an initial review is.
Totally.
I mean, is it acceptance? Is it?
I think it's before acceptance.
Well, it can't be before acceptance.
So
because the board can't act on it really until there's been acceptance.
So
And you
it's-
can't schedule a public hearing until there's been acceptance. So if they're saying we have to provide everything and approve something before a public hearing, that's against like 674, 673,
I have it like, so it,
676.
where you really,
Define
like,
what's
it's,
public,
where
right?
you run into a problem is 676.4. So what's happening is, so under normal circumstances, I believe what they mean by initial, which is not defined, as Paul just pointed out, they're talking about when you're in like the non-time frame of conceptual review of a project coming in. And I think since a bunch of developers are sitting there, what they're saying is they don't want to invest a lot of money and they don't want a lot of assurances. And so what they're saying, and this is where you run into the problem, I also have it, you're going to say when you finish, it could be in conceptual, it could be technical review, however your beginning process is, when you say, okay, yeah, we all agree on this, so you're supposed to, the application is then supposed to be submitted 21 days before your acceptance meeting. But now what they're saying is 7 days after you've said whatever, yes, the initial stuff is done, you got to tell them if there's changes. So what goes to you when the application comes in, so for you, and he did cover this, because what's going to happen is the application is going to come to you for acceptance, and you're going to say one of two things. You're going to say, yes, we accept the application, which, okay. Or B, you're going to say, no, we don't think, for some reason, and he addressed this, you're allowed to do this, we don't think we have the information that's needed to say, yes, that this could proceed. And you can kill the project right there. So the developers, what they're trying to say, and the net result of this is when the project, you're either going to say, when it comes to acceptance, no, we can't accept it, or yes, we're going to accept it. And if you accept it, you're just going to judge the merits of the project, yes or no.
That's utterly insane. And from what you're saying, Al, there's 2 parts of an application that are completely different.
Yes.
One is, have they submitted all of the information, including their drainage study?
Yep.
2 is the final approval. They may have submitted their drainage study and their traffic report and their landscaping and a dozen other things. They've submitted it. We can accept it. But there's shortcomings in all of them.
Yeah.
The drainage study does not meet our requirements.
So you'll say no.
That's why
You'll say
after you-
no. So it takes away the flexibility of the planning board, because they're going to come in, and if the developer comes in and let's just suppose, you just said it, their drainage comes in, they've submitted their drainage report, let's suppose they're slow on their drainage report, and you said, yes, one of the things we need for completeness of the project is a drainage report. You get their drainage report, the drainage report comes back and it's like, oops, this looks pretty bad.
But we're not going to know that until weeks later.
Exactly.
We
And
do
so you're
not-
going to only have one recourse. What'll happen is, you as a planning board, when you get that review that says, oops, you're going to say, we reject this application.
But we
Yeah,
won't know,
that-
at the acceptance, we know, they've got to submit a drainage report, they did, you're accepted. And it's weeks later, Public Works won't even have a chance to look
I know,
at it.
I know.
To
It's a
say, well, we
gamble.
got it, but it
It's a
doesn't
gamble.
meet the
It's a
requirement.
gamble. It's a gamble. I would not do it this way personally. I think it's not a
It
good
is-
idea.
It's encouraging planning boards to just simply err in the side of caution and say, we don't accept it.
Yes.
Right off
I
the
think,
bat.
I think
Because we
it's
don't know.
developers trying to say, like, look, and I think in the planning OP workshop where they talked about it, they're really putting a lot of emphasis on conceptual design, more than it should be. They're putting more emphasis on conceptual and technical review, where there is not a timeline, where there's theoretically not as much financial risk to the developer. Let me just be clear, this is developers who are sitting here saying this. And therefore, they're trying to say, like, they want to hash everything out in those preliminary reviews, so that when they actually get into the 65-day window of you guys approving a project, that it moves really quick. You're either going to say yes or no. I think the way they're doing this puts more pressure on you guys to say, oh, well, let's just let it go through. But I think as a planning board, you're going to have to hold firm and say, okay, if you want to play it that way, when it comes in, it's going to meet all the specifications for completeness. And if it doesn't, then we're going to ding your application. You can file again.
But
with the changes.
completeness is not the issue. Completeness is separate from being approvable.
I know-
Completeness doesn't mean it meets any of the requirements. Just means they've submitted their
For
drainage
sure,
report.
yes, yes, and you're good, and you still have that option. That is exactly the option they're forcing you. They're kind of taking away the wiggle room, or they're saying any wiggle room that you're going to use in like conceptual or your initial.
Well, then why have site plan regulations? The site plan regulations say, this is what your landscaping plan, your drainage report has to look like. When we accept it, we don't know if it meets it. We've had just a week or two. We say, oh yeah, you checklist, you submitted a drainage report and a landscaping plan.
You're going to ding it.
Well, but we don't even know if it meets the requirements, because all we're doing at that point.
Then you'll have to say that you did not, that what'll happen is if you get into that phase and the report has not met the requirement for you to be able to assess whether it meets your requirements, you're going to fail
So-
the
So
So we're
application.
automatically going to
You're-
do that at the
Yes.
outset.
Yeah,
I'd
you're-
like to ask about the role of the technical advisory committee, or technical advisory review.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, they submit something, whoops, and you reject it. At what point are they able to say, how does this look? Because I want to make sure it meets the qualifications.
I think what they're pushing for is that during the technical review, you're going to say, the planning board is going to say, we have got to see whatever this drainage report, or we have to see like this, whatever, wastewater report. And you're going to say to them, look, I would suggest that we not go past the initial
Right.
phase until we know for sure. Because
Right.
you're going to tell the applicant, when you file your application, we have 65 days to act. And if the information that we need is not there in 65 days, we are going to fail your application.
Okay, so
The
I've
65
always.
days is fine, that's what it is now, and that's just fine, because vast majority of our projects are approved
Still.
in a few meetings, but on big ones or complicated or controversial ones, it'll take longer than 65 days, the present rule, and that's absolutely fine, because we ask for extensions, and developers always grant it. because the alternative is we deny it. So developers always grant it. If a planning board is in bad faith, and that doesn't happen in Durham, if you have a community where a planning board is in bad faith, and 65 days have gone by, the board will say, we need an extension, and the developer will say, I'm not giving you an extension, you've been jerking me around for 2 months. And then they get into a fight. Yeah, but that's never happened in Durham, and it won't happen in Durham. So they're causing problems where none exist for the vast majority of communities.
So do I like it? No. Can I stop it? No. So it's like, I'm telling you, it was non-negotiable. It was placed in there in Bill 170. I think, and I'm sorry to take up time, I write all this up. What was really in this term creating a lot of tension is change lot size minimums and frontage. It was like, that has become, there was a lot of legislation without a lot of good thought going on. And I think there was one that was a House bill. I think we probably all can agree that if you're on municipal sewer and water, a half-acre lot size minimum makes a lot of sense. And some would even say a quarter. But nonetheless, that makes sense. Where we really ran into trouble was when we got into off sewer and water and into more rural areas, what we've talked about. And there, under our bill, which we retained, it was like 2 acres for a majority of your areas that were zoned for single-family homes, and then whatever, 49.9%, you could do whatever you wanted. And then they started like messing around with frontages, which we started talking. So like in Ellen Reed's bill, which is 410, which is like municipalities don't do extreme stuff. And we listed all that. And so in hers, it was not bad. You could not have a lot size larger than 5 acres in those rural areas, which is fine. And the frontage was 200 square feet. And if you're on sewer and water, it's 50 square feet. What came through in 170, which is why we couldn't fight this last planning board thing, is they wanted across the board nowhere bigger than 50 square feet frontage anywhere.
50 linear feet.
Yeah, anywhere, 50 linear feet. So we said, no, you don't want to do those in rural areas. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so we formed a subcommittee. The subcommittee came in, and oh, by the way, we passed unanimously House 410, which we put in 200 feet linear off sewer and water and 50 on sewer and water. And so our subcommittee came up with 75 feet randomly. And I'm like, that conflicts with what we just passed. We have to pull this out. And so my colleagues across the aisle said, here's 2 bills. One's really bad and conflicts it, and here's one that's bad. Which one would you like? I said, I'll take the one that's less bad. So that's what we did. So that is how it went. And I think, so it was, and the reason I didn't write all this up, we wrote amendments for pretty much everything. So it was active, really active, with 2 subcommittees going on. By the time we get there, it was a lot of stuff shifting through, so I'll write it up. I think I best describe it as it's really unusual for in this current environment to have 9 bills go on, because these are all going on the consent calendar, which means if the Senate says we're fine with it, then it goes to the governor's desk. And if it doesn't, it goes to committee of conference. So we were, and I had people giving me advice on negotiating under the current climate. And I would like to give a reality check. I am in the minority party by 40 votes with an incredible push to get housing done. And my job was to make things less bad that came to me. So that's what I tried to do.
Less bad.
So I look at this and there's nothing. The only thing I think that was horribly egregious that we really passed was the decimation of tenants' rights. Mm-hmm. But subsequently, nothing terrible happened. And in this, the rest is fine. There's good stuff in it. Like in Iraq, you have to give the financial information to somebody who's selling it. That's good. Manufactured housing went through. That's fine. Independent inspectors being used in big projects, that went through, that's fine. Stairway requirements, it's like you only need one stairway up to 4 floors. The fire chief said that's fine. 6 and above, he was like, absolutely not. There's another way that needs to be done. So nothing else. And then, as I said, I think I said manufactured housing, anywhere residential, that's going through. So, and I think that the Senate concurred with that already, so.
Al, do you know on the manufactured housing, is that saying that you have to allow manufactured housing in any residential zone?
Yes.
Does
But
that
not
have to
ours.
be, so that could be on one lot, or does that mean you have to allow a manufactured housing park, or?
Just one on lot.
One on lot.
If you have a lot that's sitting
Anywhere you
there.
can put a residential stick built, you can put a manufactured
Yeah,
house.
Oh,
yeah, I actually have, at Sunset Lake, they're doing this actually.
That's
I looked at it, it's like, there was a house there, it was like rotted, they tore it down, there's like a cement pad there, and I'm like, wow, that's really weird, what are you doing with the
Just
cement
gonna
pad?
pop a-
And they're gonna put a manufactured house on there, because they said like to stick build right now, it'd be like $600,000 or $700,000 to build, so like the manufactured was better. So that one, there's no reason not to do that, that was complete universal agreement. So I will write all this stuff up, I'm sorry that I didn't do it, and then there is, I know we're gonna meet again, because Durham needs to change at the planning board side, you're gonna have to take out the student rental and make it just lodging houses. But we're gonna meet again, there's it's not secret, I think, there's members from the planning board, town council, town staff, us, that'll all be disseminated to the planning board and the town council, and you'll be up to speed with what's going on.
Boy, Al, am I glad you're on that committee.
Yeah, I have a couple of amendments I want to talk to the town about. So the lodging houses, I think the Massachusetts square footage is 80 square foot per bedroom per occupant, or 60 if they're sharing it. And I think that's I think lodging houses, you can allow them, but they can allow up to 16 people. And if you're on sewer and water, it's kind of hard to calculate what that actually means. And I think trying to fix that would be helpful. I think there was a lot of discussion about recovery houses and that. And so I think that needs to be worked on. And then the other one actually you have on the agenda, which is the infill, so that's fine.
Al, how is it affecting the way you look at these things? Because you've got in the back of your mind what's going to happen with the student population. Do you tend to look at it through the lens of a town with a student problem, or through the lens of another town where it might be an entirely different scenario?
It is, well, it is your second example I've heard, because I've heard Conway talking about tourism. And so Senate Bill 63, which is a moratorium on new construction. Concord is complaining because they're being overwhelmed by tourists, and they're doing short-term rentals and hotels, and it's boxing
Concord?
everybody
Or
out.
Conway?
Or, excuse me, Conway. And so they
Yeah.
wanted a moratorium on short-term rentals and on hotels. So that's their issue. So I think everybody has a different issue, but I think universally, everybody felt that the way we were going about it with students in terms of not being a protected class was not defensible. And it was like, the solution was obviously there, which is just make it a lodging house. So I think, that's what we're gonna do.
Is the
Yeah.
committee having a hard time coming up with a state regulation that covers a wide variety of housing problems across the state in different kinds of communities?
Yes, we are. So I think the problem is that the problem is complex, and I think the committee initially came in, or a lot of the charge was that the cause of the housing crisis is the tyranny of the municipality being really hard to work with. And I don't think that is the case.
the case.
I think there are cases of it, but it's an easy target to hit, and that's why we're doing like lot sizes and that. And I think the crux to the problem really is you need good planning. You have to get these poor souls in your community that you wrangle to be on your planning board that are going to grind away. And it's like, giving them tools and resources to figure out their own problem is what we really need to be doing. And so to do that requires funding from the state, which we're not doing. So-
Is it your feeling that maybe we need to go back to the original approach, which is if we can't develop a statewide one-size-fits-all, that we have to go back to allowing municipalities to adapt their statutes to their particular situation?
Well, that would seem
You
to
mean like
make sense.
not like home rule?
Not
local
having a,
control.
Well,
having,
if you-
should we
No,
have a
what-
statewide regulation that does not meet the needs of particular kinds of communities? Or should we go back to letting municipalities develop things that are appropriate to that type of municipality?
Statewide problems can't be solved at the local level.
yeah.
That's part of the problem.
But
No,
local problems cannot be, we're also seeing that local problems
Cannot be solved at the
begin
state
So
level.
they need to be
I saw a quote-
overseen,
I saw a quote from Thomas Edison just yesterday, and it so rang a bell. You can't solve today's problems by using yesterday's methodologies, by using
true.
the same, by
Yeah.
using the same solutions that got you here in the first place.
That's
Yeah,
true.
true.
That's true.
I mean, I think so it's not either or, it's both. So it's like, I think, first of all, municipalities doing things that are problematic, let's not do it, and we'll come up with solutions.
Well, we have had zoning issues that have kept certain housing down, but it seems like in trying to correct the statewide, that does leave certain municipalities with specific issues. If there was something that could allow municipalities with special temporary resident statuses, so that they could, like tourism and college students, and where they could tweak a little bit down, where they would allow us to create a standard based on student housing and or non-student housing, or vacation type of housing, because those of us that have special populations.
It would have been nice if the state had focused more on how better ways to curtail the abuse of planning boards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Than simply
Changing
coming through
everything.
and slash and burn all their
No,
powers.
that's
Yeah,
self-serving.
It was that way because it crossed over. It wasn't just the housing committee, it was municipal and county. They really were trying to,
Well-
they said, right, not meaning to be partisan here, but they said that, there'd been a lot of money that came from the American Rescue Plan, that all funneled into municipalities, and municipalities spent like crazy, and now they have to be fiscally responsible. I don't think that's true, but it's so I think, to your point of what the state should do, look, our committee, if you tell me something, I can file it as a bill, and it will go to housing. So I think there are some things to work on, and I certainly would like some feedback. The filing period is September, so there's a little bit of time, but I think we'll do the best we can.
If it,
I just have a question about a bill that
Okay.
I'm not sure. So, I was talking to the Exeter Housing Advisory Committee on Friday about SB 78, which is the zoning board bill, the one that establishes a non-discretionary 45-day period for appeals. Do you know?
That's not mine.
That's not your
That's
area?
at municipal
Okay.
county,
Okay.
right?
I'm
I have
just-
to read
'cause-
it. Let me read it.
Okay,
I
because
can
my
find out.
question is, if there is a community that has a 35-day period already, does the 45-day period, if it's non-discretionary at the state level, does it override that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
That-
it
that's what I said, but I wanted to make sure that I
Yeah.
didn't.
Anything the state does overrides the municipality.
Okay, that's what we thought, but.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, that breakup, it's still an uncomfortable breakup between municipal and housing. It's like we should be together. So I was trying to corral like cats together to get us to work together, and we haven't. And then there's one last thing, it's like on Friday is the Stratford County delegation does the first quarter of the budget. I put on the agenda the formation of a nursing home and advocacy working group. So it's going to be, I'm proposing, 5 Democrats, 4 Republicans, working with the county commissioners. The county land itself is actually, this is the housing partners taking place. It is county property sitting in a municipality that is a housing champion, and there's a housing component to it. It's likely going to need low-income housing tax credits to make it work. And so our working group, along with like community action partners, community partners, try to work together to come up with what this looks like and bring a report in January to the delegation when we do the county budget and see how, try to move us forward. So that's on the plate.
At the risk of being tedious,
Yes.
uncharacteristically.
I'm trained. I'm trained.
I'd like to go back to this issue of a developer putting in a lot of work in good faith, maybe not intelligently, to get something before, but as a preliminary application. I think that I can see a developer who's probably a little inexperienced doing that, putting a lot of money into it, and then just, nope, and the door is closed. And that's where I think that the Technical Review Committee has a major role to play. And in the past, the Technical Review Committee, you know, somebody comes in with something on a napkin and it's kind of vested.
Yeah, no.
But right now, what is the role of the Technical Advisory Committee? What are their responsibilities to help a developer begin to develop something that will probably have a good chance?
Well, I mean, I think that depends on the municipality. So like if you're out like in Nowheresville, Coas County, there's probably not a lot of staff or anything to do it. So there it's going to be challenging. I think if you're somewhere larger, then you have staffing to help you work through. And I think that's really advantageous. I mean, in Durham, if you have like Public Works is really experienced with an engineering staff that can go, you know, I think you should, under best case scenario, the technical review as well as the conceptual design should pull anything that's like, okay, dude, that is like a disaster waiting to happen. No, should come out there early. And the developer at which point will not have invested a lot of money and will change course and follow direction. So that's the hope. I mean, I think this, you know, they're trying to, the push from the governor was to get things done in 60 days. And this is part of it. They're really, when you start that clock, you better be able to move along quickly with yes or no.
So putting something before the Technical Review Committee starts a clock, right?
No, it does not.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
so that doesn't start the clock.
You don't have to have a public hearing either. I mean, you don't have, it doesn't have to be a public meeting either. So it's like, we exceed the standard by televising it and everything. So we're really good about that. But again, I think the general idea, and I think in that thing yesterday, or was it yesterday? Saturday, the planning, it's like, how do we get to yes? And it's not supposed to be an adversarial relationship. It's supposed to be a collaborative relationship where you come up with the best project. And I think, you know, there are extreme cases always, but experienced developers who know what they're doing, have seen a property, they come in there, they talk to you, they say, does this work? Yes, this is what I need. The hope is that it goes smoothly. It may not, but that's, you know, I think the legislation is really speaking to the extreme, not to the core.
Yeah.
It brought back bad feelings when you said you feel like a lot of your job is to keep bad things from happening. So many years I spent doing that.
It's scary. It's pretty scary, actually.
Well, I think, I wonder, Al, if some of this is motivated by having the staff technical review group have more power. Dover has a process that's different from most communities. In Dover, but this would only work with cities that have a lot of staff. In Dover, things come into the technical review committee, which is mainly staff, and it stays there until the technical review committee says you meet all the requirements, and then it goes to the planning board. and the planning board almost rubber stamps it.
Yeah.
So with all respect for my friends in Dover, it works for them. Dover's great, but I think that's not a good system for most communities. I do not, I chair the technical review group. Those are public hearings. I do not want to have a public hearing with me chairing it and the public here and having 4 meetings. That's the role of the planning board. But
The technical
but it
review,
does.
you don't
But
have to
I
have
wonder if
public.
if they're thinking, keep it just to the facts and the staff professional
To the
people
staff,
saying,
you
do you
don't get
meet it?
emotional
And
about
the
it.
public having less role and the planning board having less role.
I think the technical review has a lot, because they're going to tell you, like, you bring
Well,
in
they're gonna
your
fix
your
this,
thing, and they're
yeah.
going to say, like, wow, that drainage looks like a really significant problem. That's not going to work
Yeah,
for you.
you need to fix this.
You need to fix this. So it's not just, do you have the complete? What they're trying to do is to catch significant issues with their project early and say, that's a deal breaker,
Before you're
buddy.
out of
And it's like, you do that. So is it a great setup in the time? No. Conceptually, I understand why they're doing it, and it puts more pressure on a municipality for both conceptual and technical review, that you really make sure that you're okay with this, and you're clear with the developer and say, we don't think this will pass. or
We
this-
usually do that. I mean, it comes
you're
in
fine.
for the first meeting, it's accepted as complete, most cases. I do a write-up and I say, here are a dozen issues that will need to be worked out. I don't know if that meets what they're talking
No,
about.
you would have to do that before. You would have to do, so you would have to do that after your technical and conceptual review. You have, is said to be complete, whatever that means. You will have you could then, at the completion of your technical review and your initial review, you would say, here's my list. These are the things you need to change.
I mean, we do that now.
You will do that in 7
We
days.
do that. No, I mean, right up front, we have a memo, here are the dozen issues. Up front, is that
Yeah,
sufficient?
and then you're
If that's
fine.
it,
So you're
great.
fine, you're fine,
If that's it, great.
That's it.
But,
And then you'll go-
but then can we work through those issues during the planning board review?
No, no.
Well, what
You have to
what does
keep
that
it
mean?
in the technical review to work through those issues.
Yes, because what they're saying, you can pull up the language itself, but the language says, once you've then accepted it, you can only say thumbs up or thumbs down to the project. You can't go to them. You cannot go to them and say, if they come to you and say, oh, you come in, it's in, you've said, the application is complete, we're gonna judge the application, the merits of the application. And you say, you know what? The drainage system didn't work, it's 30 feet over, whatever it may be, and that's what we told you, and you didn't do it, and it's like, boom, you will just say no. So while it gains expedience in terms of getting done in 60 days, the planning board doesn't have any flexibility. Your flexibility is like,
Well, that's good. I mean, Al, I'll read it over. What's the name of the bill, number of the bill?
SB 170.
SB 170, it's the very last clause.
And it talks about you have to stamp, so what does stamping the plans mean?
I think that's complete, I got the
That's
application.
you signing them?
I don't know. I
When the
don't.
town stamps the plans, or is that acceptance?
I think it's acceptance. But again, it's gonna come, I don't know what it means to be
And
done at the conceptual review and that you're
Good.
saying like we officially.
'Cause
It's
when
not
I
an
first
official
read
meeting
that-
and you're signing off and saying, yes, this
Yeah,
plan.
that's
It's like a third party, it almost seemed to me like it was an attack at third party reviews.
Could be.
Yeah, we've said it's fine, so
But then we
can't ask.
we allow third party, I don't
Isn't
know.
there another bill about?
Yes, there is one about inspections, third party inspections,
Which is different from a
You-
third
I
party
get-
review.
I think
Right,
you're, I think for you guys, if you're doing things that you said were right already, I mean, you're gonna go through your conceptual design, you're gonna say like.
Well, not
that's-
everybody does a conceptual design.
I know, it's not required. It's not required by the state. I don't know how this will work.
It seems like there's going to be a lot of, it's very confusing.
It's
And
confusing.
it's adding a lot of things that were like, well, is this right, is this right? And I guess my concern with some of these is, first of all, what are the real intentions? Because it seems like it's more geared, looking at it from a housing point, it seems like some of this is more geared by stripping the power of municipalities rather than
Yes.
encouraging the development of more suitable housing. And it just feels like you're almost getting in our way of creating suitable housing because you're taking our power away to do it
Two-edged sword.
because we have to do it this way now.
Well, because we think you're not doing a good job, so we're
Well,
being.
It
I
forced
don't
planning
think
boards
it's.
to, like,
I don't
say
think it's a
no.
good idea.
Up
I
front.
think, here's my 2 cents on this, is you guys can work around it. You'll be fine. You know, stop panicking. You're gonna be
we'll
fine.
just, never mind, we'll just do
Yeah,
it.
we're
after.
Where's your
I just want it
concern?
explained clearly.
I
I mean, that's going to be the big thing is
Yes.
we need the lawyers to step in and say, and explain,
Yeah.
what does this mean?
Yes, you
Yeah.
will.
Are
But
we-
I just want to be abundantly clear.
Well, it'd be nice if they would do that at the State House first,
It-
so that you know what you're voting on.
Well, I knew
that
what I
would be
was
a-
voting on, but
Imagine that.
I had no choice. It was, so the discussion was like working days, calendar days. Let me just be completely, this was non-negotiable. So it is what it is. I mean, I think if it's super chaotic in the rollout, then you'll probably see somebody come with a change, but it is what it is. I'm
But do
sorry.
they
You'll work
consult
around it.
with experts, or is this just some people throwing
I
this
don't
together?
know.
It
was
feels
coming-
like
came, this
thrown
actually,
together.
this came from the Senate, not from us. Let me just be completely clear about that. And I didn't have a lot of wiggle room to change it. So, you know what? Again,
See what happens.
I realize it's not good, but you'll be fine. You will work around it.
We'll figure it out.
Mike-
That seems
Michael,
to
are
be
we
the
allowed to
status quo
discuss,
lately. Let's see what happens.
A project that's on the table?
No.
in
No.
this- Yeah, well, I'm thinking of, if I can put this vaguely, we've seen projects where it's been accepted, and then the planning board says, wait a minute, this still has to be worked out.
Oh, yeah,
Your
all the
drainage,
Yeah, that happens all,
your driveway exit.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Do that.
is this saying you should have worked that out before it
Yes.
was
I don't know.
accepted?
Yes, it will.
Really?
'Cause- yeah.
But
So
how do you work it out
DOT
without the input of the board and the public?
It's going to mean that those reports that you would have requested
butters?
at acceptance, you're going to have gone through those in the conceptual.
Well, how do-
So DOT should have commented on a driveway
Yeah.
exit before.
Or you'll make
goes
it
to the-
conditional. You'll make it, so what'll happen is like, okay, you know what? Everything will be kosher as long as DOT says fine. They'll submit their application, it'll come in, DOT comes in and says, it doesn't work, your plan doesn't work.
Does this happen at the pre-application?
Well, I'm saying,
can
you're
happen at any
saying, you're
time.
saying under the worst case scenario.
Because if you make a condition precedent, it's
Yeah.
like, we approve it, but before you can start, DOT has to bless
And
it.
that can happen at the acceptance of the application?
Well,
It'll happen
it's
during
part of the
your-
notice of decision.
Yeah, exactly. So if what'll happen is, you made it conditional, you get the report comes up during your evaluation of acceptance of the project, you would say it doesn't meet our standard and you'll fail the project. So there's no, again, while this may give theoretically expedience to get done in that window that you've opened up to actually make a judgment, you're not gonna have any wiggle room. You better, to the developer, they better have everything crossed in conceptual technical review, or the planning board will say, no, this doesn't meet.
We'll see. I mean, it may be something where most communities
Good luck.
have a template form that says landscaping, drainage, traffic, parking,
Yeah.
utilities, blah, blah, blah. And under every one, they have standard language. There are issues that need to be worked out, which,
You'll be fine.
that's what people may end up doing, which is meaningless.
and then
What-
again,
so you'll be-
how does it
again,
help anything?
I hate to be, so you'll be fine. You can work around it, which is what I ultimately said, but it's like, if we had allowed the frontage to go in, we'd have two bills that were conflicting that we just passed, and it was madness. And it's like, so Senate Bill 84, which does, as I already said, is, I imagine we're gonna retain it, but it's like, so that's, sorry to
Right.
take up so much time. but
No,
that's-
it's,
That's where we are.
It's
I think it's
interesting.
worth talking about.
Yeah.
We gotta keep an eye on you guys.
You do. It's like, I have to say, it was really a lot of work.
Absolutely.
I just felt like this, I feel a little bit kind of ground down mentally at this point.
Sure.
And I think that, we have some time to kind of, locally, you're gonna be fine locally. I think the stuff that you're doing is good, and you're ahead of the curve.
Is that because Durham's bigger and has staff? I mean, are smaller places like Madbury and Lee, are they going to have trouble with these laws?
Probably. I think just that you have a good working group, this working group that's
There's a lot of
generating
places that are
ideas
gonna be
is
very challenging.
is good. So everybody has their challenges, but I think you'll be fine.
I mean, you can see where some communities that don't have the staff
It'll be
could
bad.
actually just be blown over by
Yeah,
by a
right.
developer because they're just going to march in and say all this and they won't have a staff to back it, so they'll
Gonna
just
call
have.
Janet Wall.
Can I ask Taylor, are you hearing anything about legislation?
Sorry.
Do you have any sense of,
Probably not more than you. Probably not more than Al, who's like on the ground. Yeah, probably no more than you. I'm really interested in the outcome of SB 84. That's one that, because I do a legislative update for Exeter on Fridays, which is not as detailed because I'm not at the State House, but that's one that they have a lot of questions about, and I think I've heard a lot of people asking questions about like the difference between, well, if it has water but it doesn't have sewer, if it has this but it doesn't have that, like the acreage requirements for that.
Yep.
So that's one that I feel like got a lot of attention, and I'm interested to see the clarification on that because they're sort of asking questions that I don't know the answer to.
Well-
and I couldn't find the answer to it, so.
I think on that though, because that also, because your conservation subdivision ideas is part of that, I think. It's like, I think when we move off of sewer and water and we begin to look at land like that, we got to think about conservation subdivisions and what that looks like. And so I think, believe it or not, we are ahead of the curve on that.
So the one, I think it might be the same bill we were just talking about, one of the other paragraphs in it says that towns can't restrict the use of the open space for underground utilities.
Yeah.
They cannot use it for underground utilities?
No,
We
we
can't restrict
we
it.
can't keep them from using it for underground
Yeah.
utilities. So, open space.
That's
in-
170, I think.
So that would mean any underground utilities right through sewer, septics, would have to be allowed in the open space areas, which
If it's
attacks the
restored?
draft that we're currently working on, because I was trying to keep septics out of the open space area.
Yeah.
really?
If
And
it's
also especially
restored?
wooded areas. And if you have septic on a raised mound.
So that's why I think, back to your point though, Paul, with SB 84, thinking through it has not been thought through. And so I think pausing it to really think about what that open space, what that land looks like, how do you develop it, it needs work. It really felt at the end like we had this spinning wheel, like, okay, let's come up with frontages and lot sizes by the spin the wheel method. So
Yeah,
I
I
think we just need to pause to like think through where we're at. And I think so Senate Bill 84 is very close to the House bill, and I can't remember the number that does the same thing. And we've retained that in committee. So I think it needs work.
I think with conservation easements, you're not allowed to put utilities in. And I think, if I were writing something to allow underground utilities, I would say that it has to be restored to its natural
Oh, yeah.
look. And then you have to say, well, what's the...
Oh, no, well,
Except if they have to get in there and repair it.
you can't put trees, if you put underground utilities there
You can't put
of any
trees.
type, you
Can't
can't,
put a
you
tree.
can't put trees
Wood.
back
Yeah,
in.
roots are bad.
That destroys the utilities.
Sure you can.
No.
Oh, no, yes,
Not
you're
for-
right,
yeah.
sure.
All right,
you're
that is like, and that is actually in violation of several other laws on the books.
Yeah.
Japanese knot works well.
Well, that'll come
Oh,
in
yeah,
anyway.
Well, then
Yeah.
you have the overriding concern about all conservation easements is that the government is pulling some funding and lowering some of those offices.
In some cases,
They are-
like, some are,
They're-
some, like CELT
They're in,
is,
yeah,
is
they're,
is funded by private donations
Yeah.
and municipalities and.
the NRCS may actually be,
NRCS is in trouble.
is being dissolved,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I'm afraid.
Department of Agriculture has a lot
Heavily.
of funding.
They
too.
want to maybe combine them with another one, but it's being dissolved.
That's incredible.
So you get all the stuff. I
Yeah.
swear I will sit down and write it up. And I think, and then the attachments, I think it's really important for you guys, especially on the planning board, that you
Yeah.
read the language. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'll have the language of the amendments so you can look at them. I have some, I literally had paper. And I was like, here you go. So it's coming.
Okay,
And
well,
I'll share it with you as well.
do we want to now move on to our potential zoning changes, what we've got so far? And how would you want to do that? You want to look at I have definitions up here, or we also have our,
A table and
The
some
table.
text, two documents.
yeah.
Does everyone have those? I'll give it to
And
Ted.
I
Everyone
have
those
the
too?
table, yeah, I've got this stuff up here, and then I also have, so if you have it, I have it somewhere.
I have
I
an
have
old,
a copy of it online.
You do?
Yes.
You don't need those.
I don't need those, but thank you.
And I have it up online here, so it's in front of you if you want to see this. I have both the table and the definitions. So which one do you want to look at first?
We probably should go through the table first.
All right, it's up here,
'Cause
so let's
that's the
go.
basis.
It's the biggest, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
biggest one. So,
so I just, what's the date on the table that we're showing right now?
Oh, it
May
says for May
12th.
12th, task force at the upper left in purple.
yeah, right here.
Mine's a few months old.
Oh. Paul, do you have this one, the text?
I have the first, yeah, you scooted that over to me, but that one didn't, this other one didn't come. Put that in this card.
So this is just what
This is
you've
what we've
discussed
done.
to date,
Yeah,
but there's a lot here.
there's a lot here.
Okay,
And we
yeah, this looks
discussed,
a
I
lot.
think, before we move on with it, we discussed this renaming of office research, and we had the idea of calling it business residential, which, in my opinion, does make sense because that's actually what you have now, businesses and residential along that 108 corridor, which is, for the most part, our present OR. Is that a name we're recommending to change that to?
If, I would go even beyond that.
What would your suggestion to be? And when
That
you
we
mean-
actually move the column out from underneath research industry.
And move it to residential, commercial?
Commercial?
I think either one would fit, because at this point, it's sort of a crossover, because what it's become is a blend of commercial and residential. There's nothing industrial about it except for
Yeah.
DPW's office.
I would
Yeah.
move it to commercial because the state just passed commercial residential
Yeah.
law,
Oh.
so it's more in keeping.
So I would,
with the state.
I would just take that dividing line between commercial core zones and research industry zones then, and just shift it over one column.
Yeah,
Well, it's not really in the commercial core. How about changing the name of research industry zones to encompass what that is?
Could do that.
How
Yeah.
about lose the research aspect of it, just
Come
call
on.
it
Well,
Yes,
it's,
commercial.
how about
industry.
commercial?
Commercial industry.
Or,
Or mixed use, I mean, it's mixed
commercial,
use.
commercial industry rather than research.
Yeah,
Research
yeah,
is
it
just
doesn't
so-
do much for us
Yeah,
anymore.
it just
Yeah.
seems very specific to research. We're not going to get a lot of research, but in,
Is it the
Mixed
same
use,
thing?
commercial?
because I mean, if you look at each one is
Well-
significantly different from the others.
yeah.
and but we're also trying to admit residential housing in all of them now.
Why don't we
By-
just?
Mixed use, commercial? Mixed use
Why don't we just
dash
collapse
commercial?
it into the next one? Mixed use and office research, to allow residential into that.
Well, I mean, under all of these research industry zones, we are trying to make we're putting Ps for single-family,
Yeah.
residence,
I mean,
duplex.
I can see
Michael,
where,
says somebody online want to say something, just yell. Michael or Eileen?
Michael is left.
Oh, okay.
the only
Okay.
reason I'm not jumping on the bandwagon for mixed use right now is mixed use is also a line item of a specific type where you put
Yeah.
everything in the
Yeah,
same building.
Yeah, I wouldn't use mixed
And
use.
I would be afraid that people would look at that and say, that's all we're going to get, and that's not the intent here.
Or you could call it residence commercial, or residential commercial industry, or?
Industry, residential.
How about like you just keep it like what you suggest, the one that you suggested to change the name?
And then move
The
it?
broad
Or
one is
just leave it?
business residential is the name of the category.
And, yeah,
And then just, what do we want to call it, whatever,
and, well, actually,
108 OR.
or I could take a moment and advocate with Michael's comment saying, this 108 section of BR would be the next extension of the commercial zone, of the core commercial.
Yeah, but it's not, it's a linear, I mean, professional office is a little bit linear, but
Coast
it's still
Corners-
close in.
But Coe's Corner's there.
It's right there, and it's right, you
You
start
run it
it.
right, you're running right up 108 from out of the center of town.
Yeah, it's right
through
in line.
Coe's Corner, OR, is all contiguous there.
Yeah, it's not really core commercial, and core commercial, for instance, has architecture regulations, which is
Well-
justified because it's in the core, theoretically walkable area.
Okay, well, I mean, like I said, I just
Yeah.
wanted to throw devil's
Yeah.
advocate for a moment,
Yeah,
get
would-
you to defend it.
Yeah.
What's the simplest?
I would keep it with
them-
the fourth one, but come up with a category or name that makes sense
Well,
instead
what
of
really-
research industry.
I think the word research is
Well,
it's
it's-
kind of unnecessary. It's
I think, well, I think
outdated.
both those research and industry don't fit there.
No.
Neither one of those terms fits with what's occurring there in reality.
Residential business.
So, yeah, we could, well, business residential is going to be a name of the zone, of the
Oh yeah, we don't want the
specific
same thing.
zone. So the category name, I mean, residential, commercial,
Yeah.
Residential commercial.
What
Yeah, I
would
think it's a
happen if
resi-
we added residential to the remaining three?
no.
No, if we,
I-
no, leave those the way they are and then just change
We don't
residential commercial.
We
Or
don't
was it
want
residential business?
Residential in the light
No,
office
well,
research?
the issue with the old name is that none of the things that's in that name's occurring in the zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much
Because,
industry.
because it's a couple of small
Everything
businesses,
has research.
a lot of residential, and Riverwoods. What's research and industrial about that?
There's nothing, and it's not going to happen that way either. It's
Or
just-
what's office research about those? Nothing.
Conceptually, it just was so sweet.
It was.
It was a pipe dream.
Back when it was just bare land and we were trying with that space.
It was a
so
pipe dream.
easy.
Whatever.
So, I mean,
Residential,
Residential,
commercial,
commercial,
or
yeah.
mixed use, or what, commercial industry,
Why don't we take
whatever.
residential commercial and then see how it.
'Cause that's the reality on
susses
the
out.
ground.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
that's,
That's what goes over to the next category,
and it stays where it is.
yeah.
but we're adding commercial to it.
No, so this part here,
Come commercial,
up
residential.
here is becoming residential, commercial.
Oh, okay.
And then this is still going to what's in blue.
And this is business
So we
residential.
don't want the word industry in
BR.
that category?
There's no industry occurring. No, we're going to take industry out.
How about business park?
I mean, there is some light industry in some of the underlying zones, but industry isn't,
We're also adding, yeah, with the other ones, I think we can just leave alone name-wise.
Yeah.
Residential slash
And
commercial.
we're adding-
Slash industrial.
We're adding residential to those things, which could encourage some mixed use or,
I mean, you could change
multi-unit
things, update them, but Durham Business Park is just how many homes, but you know,
Yeah.
there's no harm.
Well, we
where they are.
don't want to do anything
Just
that's
leave it.
going to discourage industry from coming in.
well, we won't because it's where we have the name residential commercial.
and we hide industrial zone and we.
If anything, and all those things are permitted,
Yeah.
And then anything, well, okay, well, let's put in this doctor's office and we're gonna put units upstairs, which will be housing, which will add to our revenue. So it just really encourages them to put housing into any business that they put in there.
Manufacturing company.
Well, that's going to stay in Orly.
There we go.
in our
Well, and
industrial
industry is
zone.
part of commercial.
Yeah.
You like residential commercial better than residential
Yeah.
office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like residential
Office
office.
are
Yeah.
now a dead
It's-
use.
Yeah, let's
It's
just
a dying use.
put the offices in the mall.
All right, residential
There you
commercial.
go.
uh-huh.
All right.
It's just like, let's go
I
to
mean, the only office space that's showing any growth area is medical.
Yeah,
It's 'cause I haven't
and it's not so
started my chip
office
yet.
oriented as it is service oriented.
Right. So it's more commercial than
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
But we're planning for the future. Planning for my chip.
Oh, but that's,
That would
commercial
be-
includes industry.
That would be fine in any of those other in areas,
All
yeah.
right.
All right, so we're, everybody looking at the Ps, everything's good there. Okay, the senior housing thing, did we make a decision on,
That's all,
are we
Yeah.
just gonna get rid of senior housing?
Yes.
Completely?
yes.
As a
Yeah.
classification?
We're going, yeah, housing is housing.
Yep, I agree. Loosely.
Damn, we just get there and you're already getting rid of it? What the heck?
There's plenty left for you to move into. There's plenty left for you to move into, and they are all classified as over 55. So those changes will continue until those units make those changes themselves.
I think it's fine. I think it's
Or the state gets rid of the allowance.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let me think for a moment. If we get rid of the category of senior housing, could they just make it regular? Maybe, because zoning change, but they're not going to. Riverwoods, Baghdad Woods, Harmony Home, they're not going to change there.
No, they are still classified
It'd
as over 55, and they still have that as part of their requirements to live there. We're just saying you can't build any more.
Yeah, I mean, if we change the zoning designation, even if we still have the definition, and they were approved as senior housing, could they come back and amend their site plan? Maybe, but they're not gonna, I don't see
They're
that
probably not going
happening.
to do, but they might say, hey, since maybe we could add some regular housing in there for
Is
some of
Foss
our.
Farm,
Yeah.
Foss is over
Yeah.
55.
I mean, I could see potentially Foss doing it, but like on Pearly Lane and
But
all.
would we care?
I wouldn't.
Would we care if somebody
It-
wanted to change it?
No,
Yeah, I
what difference
mean-
would it make?
I mean, those potentially, theoretically, were probably built at a attainable housing level, so hopefully it would still be there,
Yeah. I mean,
more so than
it,
other places in town.
all it would do is bring more under 55ers into the situation. And that would probably be, I mean, isn't,
We are,
yeah. Well,
because the rule says you only need 155 or over in the house.
yeah, and you still have children in there.
So this
55 's
probably
not fair.
would allow all those places like
Which goes back to why
Fitz Farm.
Why do we need it?
do we need, why were we exempting school?
We don't
Fees.
need,
Why-
that exempting
they're
school
giving
thing
a
is gotta stop.
Density bonus for senior housing?
And that's going away.
Right,
Here.
right. And then they charge the daylights out of people coming in, and so they needed a break.
And then they get exempt from schools. And the reality is, if you're over 55, if you're 55 and you can live in one of those things. When I was 55,
So
I had
the
a
density has
I had
nothing
a
to do
kid in
with it.
school.
Well,
Right,
So why,
okay.
you know,
I like this.
Yeah, so Fitz Farm probably could, if they wanted, come back to amend their site plan approval to delete senior housing, but.
But they're not
sounds
going
like
to,
that's-
because if they do, we'll probably would hit them with a school fee.
they're not
Oh,
going
there
to.
you go.
Yeah, they're not going to because, yeah.
There you go.
And but going forward, if we no longer have more over 55 being built, there's not going to be that exemption for school,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I've never liked that exemption.
Yeah, they could do it privately, but it wouldn't be our zoning.
We're not gonna, yeah, they could, yeah. Well, they won't be able to do it privately.
All right,
because that
moving
would be
on, moving on,
discrimination.
moving on.
fine, yeah.
Okay, so that's good. Okay, for the next one, accessory uses to a single-family residential. We're getting, the accessory dwelling unit, we're getting rid of that attached and detached. And we're pretty much making it permitted, for the most part. What are these? Accessory dwelling unit. Oh, so we're getting rid of all this, so just accessory
Yeah,
dwelling unit.
those are gonna be like by law, you're gonna have to allow them anyway.
Yeah, what do we have these? Oh, we're just getting rid of all this red right here. We're getting rid of all this red, right?
Yeah. I may need to make some changes in Article 20, just minor stuff, though.
So if it's, yeah, so if it's red, it's going away.
So if the state's going to take away.
State's gonna,
If we should just go into the manufactured housing line and make it red right now.
Yes.
Oh,
What?
no, I would hold off on that.
On the
Wait to see
what?
what the state change, I wouldn't change manufactured housing till
You'll
you see
know.
what the state does.
When
There's
will
some
they-
really nice manufactured housing.
No, well, that already got, didn't the governor sign that?
I don't think so,
Not-
but it's
No.
going.
No,
No.
the Senate concurred with
It's,
it.
yeah, it's passed everything.
So it's,
except-
that will, anywhere.
I don't see her not signing it.
No,
Yeah.
no, it'll be
Oh,
signed.
it-
So anywhere
yeah.
that you allow, so the manufactured housing
Anywhere you
anywhere
allow
we
single
allow
family,
single-family
is,
home,
you're gonna allow
you're
it.
going to have to allow manufactured, so.
which
Yeah,
is gonna be everywhere except central business
Yeah, so
and
make all those
courthouse
changes.
and Coast Corner.
Which
Everything
means,
else.
for our purposes, we might as well just strike the line
Totally.
when it comes to that point, because it's a single-family house.
Yeah, for sure.
But wait to see what the state does on that.
We have a manufactured
used-
house
the
across
ne-
the
by the
street from
next
us.
meeting.
There's-
Yeah,
there's-
I think that's going. I think
That's
that's gonna
going.
pass.
What?
I think that will. The governor will probably
governor's
Yeah, but
sign that.
I would wait on that. That's, you know, if somebody puts a manufactured housing unit, a traditional, in the middle of Faculty Road neighborhood or on a vacant lot on Baghdad Road,
Whatever.
it will not be well received.
They-
But it won't be
they-
allowed.
No,
It'll be
I'm
allowed.
sorry.
If it's
It
allowed by
won't
the
be legal.
state, then we don't have a say.
I would say,
They
in
look
terms
like
of waiting,
ranches.
with it, by the time you
They
have
are
your next
ranches.
housing meeting, you will know. And I can say with a great deal of certainty that what Paul suggested you're gonna have to do anyway, so you might as well just do
We-
it.
Yeah, if the state requires it, then your hands are.
Going to.
I would not
But I-
initiate it because you're needlessly creating controversy
It's
for
next,
the other things
it's
you're doing.
next, well, no, because the next stop for this
You
is
could
going to
just do it
be,
next month.
wherever the next stop ends, it's going to be pointed out, by the way, you have to strike that line.
Yeah,
And
don't-
Yeah, and
by
if the
the
state
way-
requires
Once
it,
it
So
goes
it's
to the
just-
governor's desk, it will
So it's
be.
going to happen, it'll
Manufac-
happen at the next stop.
Yeah.
So
We have to
a
s-
special exception would allow us, is there any way that we can meet the requirements of the state? But
No.
No, I-
make sure
No, it's very
that
black
it
and white.
looks
The,
okay.
It's very
the
black and white.
reality,
It's gonna look fine. It's gonna
It'll
look
be
it's
fine.
gonna be
fine.
fine. The
Manufactured housing
reality
looks very
is,
different than it
You'll
once.
be
we
fine.
have
It
to,
really
It's
looks nice.
beautiful.
It's
That's the
not.
theme.
we have to
Yeah.
pull, we have to
It's gonna be
force
all right.
ourselves out of this bias against them, thinking we're gonna get a bunch of trailers. That's not it. Manufactured homes are built under very strict conditions in a factory. They are built to make it down a road on a truck. They are built to spec and they are built well. They are also one of the only affordable housing options for many people at this point, and their cost is going up. You're not gonna pick one of these up for 50 grand. You're gonna be picking these up for 350 and up.
You think 350,000?
It's against
350,000
the law, so
and
let's move
up.
on.
Yeah.
It's not-
Okay.
it's
You
You can
not
just do it
worth
next
wasting
month.
your
You can just do
time.
it next
Yeah,
month.
when the
Okay.
state
It's
does
gonna
their thing,
happen.
you'll incorporate it.
Most people would be double what they are. They look like ranches. You would not even be able to tell the difference. I've actually seen some stick-built ranches that I thought were actually mobile homes.
Right. So the use is accessory to a single-family residential use.
That's the, and that's coming down from the state.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah, that one.
non-negotiable too. So
Everybody's
Yep.
got
We can
one.
just move right past that.
And the next one.
So
Mixed use with residential, we're adding all those as Ps in all of our, so that you have that, which is perfect for our business areas, our new residential, commercial areas were allowed mixed use with residential.
It makes sense.
It makes perfect sense because it encourages, if you're going to build that office, put some apartments above it.
That's the law too.
So, yeah, so I think we left, and we haven't talked about that for the commercial zones, commercial core.
For what, mixed use?
Yeah.
We
that
have
is-
Ps here.
So we have-
The copy I was just handed for May 12th.
Well, up here, mixed use with residential. I'm looking at the wrong one.
Right
And
there,
then-
it's all,
These
yeah,
are
no,
all-
go back to the center group.
Oh, here we didn't go. We didn't address any here. So, yeah, you're right.
But you do have some zoning amendments now before the planning board.
We
related
do,
to
so
that.
should we just address them now?
I would keep that separate. Yeah, because that'll confuse things if you overlap. Because if those go through, they'll go through on their own.
That, I would just make sure you look
So
at.
maybe we should add a note here saying,
Due
to consideration of present zoning amendments, because I guess I'm stuck on, well, why wouldn't we want to encourage that? Or are you
Oh,
saying
you
we're
do.
double dipping and confusing?
No, it'll just confuse it, like, for instance, under central business, we
Right.
have a whole page of that, and you don't want to include that, add that
Right,
in
'cause
here,
we're gonna
it's
make
already
that-
taken care of.
And we're changing the makeup of the central business, C.
Yeah.
We just
But,
did C1,
but that's
C2.
just central business, we're not touching co's or PO.
Oh, but you
Right.
are with multi-unit residential,
Do-
so I wouldn't,
Okay.
I don't know, you
Put a
could
little
change it
star.
here, but then if we change it
Yeah.
here, we should add that text as well.
Put down House
and-
Bill
Could,
631.
yeah.
All right.
Could
Please
we
put
a-
House Bill,
put a
and an asterisk of your commercial, anywhere you're talking commercial, put down asterisk, House Bill 631. You're gonna wanna look at the amendment. For some reason, I can't get it to come up on my iPad.
That was another one that was
wait,
really
That
poorly
one, that's
worded.
going to the governor's desk, so make sure you
Right,
follow.
so did they clarify what makes a quote commercial zone?
So the amendment
So
I
under
have
that-
on here, I don't know if the Senate did
Asterisk
it.
H.
I don't have the Senate
631.
amendment or what that looks like.
I'll load it.
Please look it up.
Because my question when I first read it was, what qualifies as a commercial zone? I mean, how
they
much,
have it.
if we
It's-
allow
it's
one
in the-
commercial
it's
type
in-
of thing there, does that make it?
Commercial zone land means land
yeah.
zone for commercial activities such as retail and office, and so it's defined in there. So that's amendment 0667H is what passed.
So I would say, and this is more of a question for Taylor,
I don't know if I have the answer because the bill won't come up, but you can
right,
certainly
Yeah.
ask. Can't load
but,
anything.
so it says any zone that's zoned for commercial activities, meaning if we allow a single type of commercial activity somewhere in that zone, that whole zone becomes a commercial
Commercial
zone
zone.
under this rule.
Notwithstanding any provision of the contrary, the municipality shall allow multifamily residential development on commercially zoned land, provided there's adequate infrastructure, including roads, water, sewage system, and shall be available or provided to such development. So you're gonna have, you're gonna have to allow, wherever you allow the commercial uses, which is retail or office space, you're gonna have to allow residential.
Well, and so here's the dagger in the back thing, because the,
Well, we're doing that anyways. with our-
no. Because remember, we just, as part of the definitions, we also like, where'd it go? So, commercial principal uses.
Where are you?
All right, I'm,
All right, it's now I have it.
So anyway, I don't know what this, if the Senate amended it at all.
I don't see a Senate amendment.
I don't see a Senate
two House
amendment.
amendments.
I saw the House amendment, I don't see the Senate amendment. I know the Senate passed it.
But they might not have amended it. They might have just passed it.
Yeah, so I
amended
don't,
the
I
House.
don't know 100%, but to the best of my knowledge, at least this is the language that it's probably pretty close to what it is. So anywhere that you're allowing that, you're gonna have to allow residential. So it's
Right.
That's also
Well,
my reading of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, on here, where we have residential in central business, professional, Churchill,
you're looking at it the wrong way.
It's commercial.
No,
where
what you have to
commercial,
look
you'll
at
have
is the fact that for marine sales and service, we have that as a conditional use in the RC. That makes the RC a commercial zone.
Oh, they didn't address
it's not
that.
But we allow,
I don't know that they have that in there.
Ah.
We never said
That's interesting. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either.
So
You know-
we,
And then we might need to tweak
I
it.
assume because you have to allow it by right, there is no such.
I feel like if it's a
do we have any marine sales in the RC?
So are
So-
we going to allow
Will we
office
do
to
the
be
same
mixed
thing?
with
Well,
residential?
that's my point. We need to now go back
We have to go
through.
back and change our
I don't think
uses.
you can
but
do.
if the commercial is
Are we going to allow residential to be mixed with any of those commercial uses in those
It's
commercial
not,
core
it's gonna be.
zones?
Well,
you gotta allow
if
it.
it,
It's
if
by
we
right.
look,
so
if we,
even if you're
if we're looking at mixed use with residential in
I don't think they're
the
gonna allow it.
courthouse, central business,
They're not
post
gonna allow
corner
it.
and all
So
that,
I'm just gonna say you
we
gotta-
do have
you
an
gotta let it
amendment
go.
that's
As long as it meets other requirements.
from the subcommittee that's coming up to allow that, right? So
Yeah, and I would also take a
we
look
will
at,
be allowing.
Yeah, but I would suggest, just looking at this table, because what the state's going to do, the other amendments, they're going on their own.
Also, you
Right,
said-
but
business.
Oh, yeah,
we
yeah.
are,
So if you
the
allow
question
some-
is, are
so
we
the
going to
question
be
is, if you allow it
allowing,
by
we
conditions
will,
to meet- and it went through-
with
so
the-
that's,
to allow
that's more of a note for the future for the planning board as it
Right.
is
Right.
for the housing task
Yeah.
force.
Do we
But-
need to keep track of our
would be
conversation?
by right.
So
So
we're
I had
saying,
the wrong question.
well, we're not going
Yeah,
to
I
do
got
that here because
Anywhere
the
you
state's
go on
going to do
commercial,
it.
you're gonna have to
But
allow
we
residential.
need
Even if the commercials.
a
We need
record
some-
of the fact that we
Yeah.
support it.
I agree, and that's why.
Which we can't do today.
Well, it's a
But we could
conversation.
add, I think for clarity's sake, when it comes to like right here on mixed use with residential, we do have an amendment in play to make that an allowed use in most of these areas. Should we put an asterisk and explain that amendments are working their way through that may change?
I wouldn't.
No?
It's, you
No,
know,
I-
you've got various zoning amendments.
Or when
that
it
change,
changes,
we've
it
got
will just, we will
state
just
law.
automatically
Yeah,
change.
well, it's just,
Yeah.
it has its own life. It'll,
So we do know that in this area, we will be making, first of all, there will be CB1 and CB2, where CB1 will be mixed use with residential by right permitted, and then CB2 will be mixed use with residential continuous CU. That will happen.
Yeah.
And the other ones, multi-unit will be allowed, right?
right, in PO, Churchill, and Courthouse.
So.
And that's
before.
before the public hearing on Wednesday on that.
That's no
Yeah.
commercial, that's just housing?
Yeah.
Multi-unit, yeah.
Okay.
They already have mixed use.
And then there's the three-story
Yeah,
thing,
mixed use.
also public hearing on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's just downtown.
Central business, yeah.
Central business, yeah. All right, so we're good with this line.
Yeah.
What a good job.
Oh my God.
And then we're down to notes.
It's
It's so painful.
get into the weeds.
So,
I
yeah,
think
this
the
will be the
notes are
last
just
time.
explanatory.
This is the fun part.
That was our last
Yeah.
edit. Okay, so the notes are single-family residence, 2 to 4
Oh,
residents.
5 was also you included.
Multi-unit residential is allowed in the business residential and office research light industry districts only on sites containing over 2 acres and only in conservation subdivisions. We have that noted, right? There's
Yeah, you talked about it
It's
at the last
asterisks,
meeting. I just
yeah.
want to, should it be over 2 acres or 2 acres or more? No, It's,
containing over 2
It's-
acres or
it's easier.
2 acres or more.
yeah, it's
Because
probably, generally it's
if you're at
better,
2
yeah.
acres, yeah, 2 acres or more.
Containing 2 acres or more.
Or you could say a minimum of 2
A
acres.
minimum of 2
Yeah.
acres containing, yeah.
Did you say that Reed had brought in an amendment that said rural thing has to be, or cannot be more than 5 acres?
Yeah, that's 410.
Was it 5? I thought it was lower than that.
5.
can't
That's
be
Ellen. I
required?
looked back at Ellen's, that made it through us. It's like, so it was 4 initially, was the one that they kept throwing around. But when I went back and read it, it said 5.
So it can't be, the requirement can't be any more than 5 acres.
Yes.
But didn't someone else go with 2?
Yeah, yeah.
So Senate Bill 84 and the one we retained are 2. So there lies the rub. We have, let's see, let's pick the numbers. 5, 4, 2. So like somewhere in there's a
It was
sweet
a
spot.
lower number too.
Totally. It's like, so there lies why I think we need a pause on all this, because we're like,
It's just.
we haven't
getting-
really thought through the
No,
rural
they're not.
areas
They're
yet.
just coming up
2
with.
makes it an RB.
I think Exeter said they do too, but
I think Exeter.
to Michael's point, to be continued. I don't think that will be resolved this year.
Well, the Ag Committee says that if you want 2 horses, you have to have at least 2 acres for each horse, so.
There you go.
That's right, you do need.
Yeah, well, you're
there
not
are-
going to have, no 2-acre farms is basically what.
I don't know.
Well, you can have
To
a
be
farmette and put on some
I wouldn't worry
goats.
about it. That one's not going to be an immediate
2 acres
concern,
per horse.
so don't worry about it.
All right, so I think those
And
notes are
that's
just,
best practices.
Those are fine.
yeah, that's what you talked about last time. And then you got the table of dimensions.
Yeah, so,
Oh, right.
where did we leave
Right,
off?
right.
I thought we got through this.
Yeah, you did.
We
This
did.
is
We
This is
crossed
all
a
what
lot
you talked
out.
about before.
And you're compliant. Let me just, the
We're
only thing I want.
compliant with this?
So the compliance,
changes?
what, I don't know what's gonna go through on this. This one's a lot more iffy, because it's Ellen's bill, which is probably gonna meet resistance, but just keep in mind, for residential A, you're served by sewer and water, so it'd be 50.
Oh, for the street?
Yeah, minimum lot frontage,
Oh, for this frontage, it'd be a minimum lot
Yeah.
frontage of 50?
50. B, you're not on sewer and water, so you're fine, that would be 200. C is 200, so you're fine, except resident A, in theory, that
For
could, for minimum lot frontage,
for lot frontage.
that could be 50 theoretically.
All right, so we're right at 100, it's probably gonna be 50.
It's probably gonna be 50, everything else you'll be in compliance.
It's kind of hard to do.
Is anything on B on sewer and water?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm.
Parts of B.
anything, so
I'm
let me
being
like,
on
just to
sewer
make
and
your
So
life
we, if that goes through, we're going to need to add a footnote.
Yes, just to make your life more complicated. Anything on sewer and water will be 50, so
Because
just make it.
like out on Durham Point Road, we don't have sewer and water out there for RB, but over here on Candy Farms, next
So wherever you hit
Garrett's
sewer
Drive
and
area,
water,
we do.
just keep, I would just put a little asterisk under that.
My
The,
lot frontage is huge.
So, and
It's like, I get 2 entrances in it.
a half-acre lot with 50 foot of frontage, that's,
How about a 3-acre lot with 150
That's-
foot? I mean, why are we, a 150,000 square foot lot with 150 feet of lot
well,
frontage?
some of these are, you
They
might,
go out.
you're wide enough for a driveway, and then you have all the land in the back.
Kind of chops.
So,
Yeah.
let's say, yeah,
Pork
so
chop.
Yeah.
it's a,
Pork
yeah,
chop
it
or
creates a
balloon.
pork chop type lot as opposed to a, but yeah.
So I don't want to go down that quagmire, to be honest. I would just say that,
I
just,
think-
I
I
don't know,
wait and see what
I
the state
don't
says
know what's
on
gonna
that one.
happen.
Yeah, let the state
But
decide
50
there, it's
ma-
not worth.
I would, anything served by sewer and water down the road, likely it's gonna be 50.
It's gonna be 50.
It's
Okay,
gonna be
a minimum.
50. So I think we're fine there.
So we're making that down to 150 for a few instances where it's a, why don't we make that by special exception? Where
Well-
there's something special about the configuration of the lot.
No, it's not saying you have to be 150, it's saying you can go down as low as 150 if, when you're subdividing, that's what makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
But
can be
it's saying that
more.
you can't-
Yeah, you
Yes.
can go that low. You don't
Why
have
do we
to.
want them to do that?
Well, they may have a lot, then it actually would save them from having to get permission to do it. They were,
Well, it
We
was,
have-
the reason
They
it was
have that.
300
We
before.
have so many, because of our shorelines and, and wetlands and all, we have some really, really strangely shaped lots where, yeah, the lot itself could be broken up into 2 or 3 pieces, but together, there isn't that much, because
have
it's shaped
frontage.
like a big arc.
Yeah, yeah.
You got the little pieces attached to the road, so, and you're saying, okay, I can't go and do that subdivision because I just don't have enough road frontage.
Well, my
to be able to do it.
sister-in-law has 22 acres along the river, and this would enable her to subdivide it.
Yeah,
Oh, but we still
Right.
keep, we still have a good thing in here about minimum frontage along the shoreland, and that's,
Well, this would be
there's no
frontage
change
on
in
the
that.
road.
It'd be, yeah, it'd be,
She
That would
could-
be road frontage.
She could take this
which road is it on?
on Wiswall, it's right next to the
Griswold?
dam.
Okay.
And she has a very narrow frontage, and then it balloons out with all this lamprey frontage. So having to have a minimum of, the lot frontage is causing to have separate thoughts about putting 3 houses there.
well, we have a minimum shoreland frontage of 200 feet in all the residential zones, and that's not changing.
Well, this is the road frontage we're talking.
Yeah.
We have 250 feet of road frontage in 100 acres.
so you're fine.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, again,
you're
like
right. I mean,
410
If you wanted to-
says-
To acknowledge what you're saying, that
Yeah.
there could be something.
I
that
don't,
goes
I
up.
mean, I have no idea what's gonna happen with frontage. I do, as I said, the 50 on sewer and water is probably
It-
likely.
I would imagine because
It'd be relevant in the.
No, but I think the
parcel.
rural, I don't know what the rural is gonna be. It could be anywhere, I mean, it could be 200, it could be, I don't know what it's gonna be.
more
I have
than
no
likely,
idea.
if there's people out there that feel like they have land they would like to develop, but they can't because of, in any municipality, because of the frontage, that would be where they would be pushing for their,
I think it's a discussion we need to have, a rational discussion,
Yeah.
what makes sense, and I don't,
and what
Right
does
now-
stop people from developing.
I think right now, both lot size off of sewer and water, lot size and frontage is like, we're just randomly flailing around, which
I
is not a
know,
good
yeah.
thing to be doing. And I think thinking through exactly what we're gonna do would be a good plan. So I think you're in compliance with everything except the residential A and B that are on sewer and water.
And then we'll just leave it to them.
Yeah.
There was
fix
also
it.
that one that was effectively going to get rid of where you could not mandate less density than what DES says you could have for your septics.
That we've retained it.
Because that effectively says there is potentially no minimum. Because
Yeah.
if you happen to be in the right spot, extremely efficient,
That hasn't gone through, so you're fine.
And
Oh, you don't think that's going to go through?
It hasn't, no.
That
we
one
retained
dropped.
it.
Well, that's good.
We retained it, so that's
From what I
like,
know about the most recent technology with septic treatment, they're developing techniques that would allow people, to build on the island up there. It's not going to be a good way to control density. Or content, yeah.
Yeah. It's not, right. But it sounds like that's not going through.
It's not
That's
going
good.
through.
that one got tabled.
and I don't know, again, the frontage and lot size right now, none of it may go through. So it's like,
Okay. Well,
So
we'll
you're
see
fine.
then.
yeah.
And so anything else on these? We had this last note. Those last density figures are given for every district. Okay, so this is a note on the bottom.
Oh, that
This note
minimum
8.
lot, oh, that should go somewhere else under density.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll move that.
and then we have definitions.
Yeah, I think we're up to definitions now.
Okay. Up on the screen if you need.
And nobody needs the text? for this one?
No, well, I've got it up on the screen if you need. I have the text, but I also have it up there. So residents 2 to 4 units for 2 4-unit residents,
2 to 4.
2 to 4.
2 to 4.
So, yeah, that
2,
is,
3, 4. That's the new, that's the new definition.
so that nomenclature, you weren't the only one to stumble on it at first. I think we need better nomenclature.
Oh.
Yeah, because
Two-
it is.
two-
I think we
Then
should
vague.
2/3/4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
vague.
Okay.
Because like, what about 3?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
think
so.
that
Yeah.
hyphen just,
Right,
2 through 4.
You're not sure how to read that at that
Right.
point?
yeah,
yeah.
You could say 2, 3, and 4 units.
So 2, 3,
Yeah,
4,
that's-
4?
2,
I would
3, or
specify.
4
I
units.
would- Yeah, I'd go with 2/3/4 or 2 through 4,
Yeah,
something like that.
either or.
Yeah.
Would this enable somebody that has a single-family home to convert that single-family home into a duplex and then add 2 accessory dwelling units on?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's kind of creative. I was gonna say that
Might be what I-
this, it's
Yeah.
like, feels to me a lot like the fourplex coming back to life. The fourplex-
Potentially, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's giving the fourplex a potential heartbeat.
yeah.
And those are, I mean, those,
I mean, when I read over this, the only place I started to get into some feedback is page 2, where you have
Okay.
all your requirements.
Well, Al is the one who mentioned form-based codes.
I like a lot of this.
are we on?
And then there's some stuff I think you gotta take off.
You go ahead, and then there are also a couple of things that I found confusing.
Okay.
So let's see what you deal with
Yeah,
first.
It's just a first cut.
Okay, the first cut, number 8, like.
Did you want to, the second set, 17557A, okay? In the middle of the first page?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with the first page.
All right, so all of this is fine, density, standards, all that, for workforce housing, all of this is good. Okay. And then Article 20, compliance, key 2 for, we would have to make that change again, 2, 3, 4 unit residences.
Right. So I just want to say 1 through
Following
8.
form-based codes apply to the construction of any 2,
2, 3, 4
3, 4
unit, yeah.
residents in any of the 4 residential zoning
Yeah,
districts.
so I just wanted, this is sort of basic form-based code, so just keep that in mind. And the idea of that is to make 2, 3, or 4 unit structures compatible in a existing single-family neighborhood.
So if indeed you were to take your home and convert it, you want it to kind of look the way it did before, as much as possible?
Yeah, or be,
In,
you
or in
know,
the same,
consistent.
in the same family, so to speak?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
So this is kind of almost boilerplate form-based code
Yeah.
stuff, but obviously
Yeah.
you can do whatever you want with it.
I would just say like under 5, so keep in mind that with parking is gonna go through and the parking will be no more than 1 parking spot per unit. So a duplex would not have 4, so
It's
for
number
duplexes,
5.
you'd only have 2 parking spots anyway.
Right, but an applicant might choose to have 4.
Yeah, they can,
Well, I mean,
probably not.
yeah,
going to, but-
I mean, this would depend upon
So
the house, though.
so my heartbreak with this one, or heartburn with this one, is on the front we said, oh, let's do cottage courts. If I do a cottage court, my parking's going to be on the street or in front. I'm not going to throw suddenly driveways into
the
the rear of the
back,
cottages,
yeah.
Hopefully not,
right? Because that destroys the cottage court.
yeah.
So if I have a cottage court, I can't do 5.
My issue with the parking, parking areas for 3, 4 unit buildings, right now, as far as form-based code, if you're looking for that perspective, right now, all our residential homes in our residential areas have the parking in the front.
They do, and garage.
Because it's traditional, with a garage in
Well,
the front.
right, well, that's
So
single
if you,
family.
but if you turn your single family into a 4-family, why can't you have the parking for each individual unit in the front or provide it in the front? I mean, it could become,
I think,
it could
Sally,
become impossible.
to your point, like, so there's a difference between like a conversion of an existing building into a duplex
new
or a
one.
fourplex and a brand new one. So it's like, if you had a new one and it's a blank lot, then in theory, you could do all the stuff that you've put on here. But if you have an existing building, you can't.
But
It's
why-
unlike-
Well, you
Yeah,
have to be
but why-
able to handle the parking.
But why have,
Yeah.
if you have a triplex, if you're gonna put up a triplex, and it's gonna be 3 of them, it's gonna be on that typical townhouse style. The garage is on the bottom, and there's a driveway right there, and
And you
you
only need-
drive in, and that, you see that all over the
And you
place.
need exactly 3 spaces.
Also,
Yeah,
yeah.
what's wrong
That's
with
it.
that? It may be distasteful to some, but it is pretty commonly, it exists everywhere. It exists everywhere.
Pearly Lane, for instance,
Everybody has their-
that.
Well, Pearly Lane has, well, that would be like a duplex where you have a driveway
What's the
for
road
each
here?
unit.
What are we?
It's a shared driveway.
Now,
Shared driveway,
What
yeah.
are we trying to prevent? What are we trying to save by
We're
requiring?
trying to avoid parking lots in
Right.
front of buildings,
Okay,
which
what-
is
but it
pretty,
rarely happens.
you wanted the
They-
quickest way to make a
they're-
single-family neighborhood to anger existing
But
residents,
that already exists.
residential
That
owners.
already exists.
That already
is-
exists.
That already
Where,
exists.
not very.
Oh, you
where-
could have a
My
driveway.
driveway.
No, not driveways, but a parking lot for multifamily. All of a sudden, you have 4 to 6
But
parking
this
spaces
is like only
in
4
front.
units or less.
4 units,
So
they
it's
would
not
have
really
only-
it's
they're not-
classified as multi-family.
And they would have their own
You
garage.
could have, what if they want 8 parking spaces? I will tell you, I
What
will tell
developer
you,
is going to say, you know what?
they might.
I have a half acre of
You-
land. I'm going to put
So,
a
You see that all the
triplex in
time.
there."
And companies.
And they're gonna put the parking in front if you let them.
You're
And the
right.
neighbors are gonna be like, wow, I thought this was a nice single family.
So-
Now I got a parking lot filled with student
It's
cars.
not. It's 3. Okay, the triplex. Let me clarify that. The triplex would only be required to have 3 parking
Per
spots.
unit.
Required.
Right,
So-
but we can't put,
But
but we
they're
don't
gonna
have a
wanna have
maximum.
6.
We don't,
They're
we
not.
don't.
I didn't.
You can put a maximum, or you can put a
guy
maximum
could,
number
but
in
if you have
front.
an existing
One will be in the
house-
garage, one will be behind the garage.
I mean, if you have an existing house, you're converting it into a fourplex, you got a yard, you got a driveway, you got a garage, you're not gonna suddenly say, you know what, I'm gonna pave the whole front yard to get 6 slots.
Are
I
you
don't-
kidding? I see that a lot.
I
Can I
don't.
just say,
I see that a lot.
You may
You're
see
right,
it
and
in-
it does-
That's a developer,
does
I'm
really
converting
change
student
the-
housing, easiest thing, I got 6 paved striped spaces in front. And if you're in kind of a student housing neighborhood, like a portion of Schoolhouse Lane, maybe people won't care. If you're on Baghdad Road or you're in Faculty Road neighborhood, people are gonna go,
You're
BS,
right.
are gonna
So
be
why don't you just
PO'd.
say you
What
can't
kind
do
of a
more
s-
than 3 parking spots?
Well,
You can't do more than state law.
Well, you
one
could
spot per
say,
day.
you get X number of parking spaces in front, and anything more must be on the side or rear. Could do that.
Yeah, you could say
I
something
think we
like
should
that.
require that the front of the building
I
be
don't think-
vegetated.
So,
Well, that's
But
exactly right, yeah.
But that's not reality. We're asking them
crazy.
to, if we are going to require the front of the building to be vegetated, we're asking for a higher benchmark than we are for a single-family home.
can I ask a question? As
Which we
someone who
should.
lives
It's a
here?
single family
Why?
neighborhood.
But it's a single
So,
family that's going to be
alright,
living in each
Sally,
unit.
I'd like to back
Okay,
that up.
shh,
I
hold
just have
on.
a question. I just have a
Right
question.
after Taylor's thing.
How, well, I don't live here, so I don't know, but how frequently is it common that you'll have a driveway and then also street parking? What is the, like, how many places in Durham allow street parking
we-
where
we-
there's
We
residential?
have very little of that.
Okay,
it generally, we don't allow it.
okay, so then you need
And
to be
it's
able
not
to park
practical.
You need to park in your driveway.
in your driveway.
Well, we have to think about the
So-
streetscape we're creating.
Well,
I need to
hold
go
on.
back to the definition.
Yeah, no,
here.
go back. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know.
All right,
for-
we need
for
to go
my-
back to the definition, because this argument is about a conflict in the definition. All right, because we're saying first that the residence is a building with X number of units, which is what the form-based code was written to.
Yeah.
But then we say, but you may make them as cottage courts. which is a totally different thing. That'd be
Yeah.
4 different buildings.
Yeah.
Vertically stacked.
All
yeah,
right, so
townhouse,
the
yeah.
form-based code isn't taking into consideration the fact that that little cottage court is being called a 4-unit building.
Yeah.
And is then driving the insanity of the argument we were just having.
Because they have to have.
So you just,
Yeah.
I think split it off and put another definition for cottage court, which you're allowing.
But what about?
Or, no, I think our notes need to
Reflected
reflect the idea that cottage court's going to have its own
set of rules.
set of rules.
But what about?
Because for a 3 or 4 family, I mean, I got no problem at all requiring a garage, really, for
Yeah, I think.
I mean,
people-
especially if, you know, right now, if the Energy Committee has their way, those structures would also be getting wired for EV.
Yeah. And you're,
And, you know, I'd much, you know, do you want your EVs
outside.
stations going
or
to be out
inside?
front at the road?
You want them inside.
You're going to want them covered, probably, and you're going to
Yes.
want them where they're not accessible from the street.
And having a garage where you can drive in is just it's much nicer. And I think that if you look at your stacked units, that is often what you will find. Your townhouses, your row houses, your vertically stacked units are gonna have that first one is a garage that people drive in and then they go upstairs. And that's very popular. But you have to have a
It
driveway in
turned-
front of it. You have to have a way
Well,
in.
if you see where there's townhouses in a single-family neighborhood, there's one in particular in Dover, off Silver Street, I forget, one of the side streets. You can have 3 townhouses in a single-family neighborhood, that'll be okay, but they need to be turned sideways to the street, so the driveway's going in, and you don't see the garages from the street. Imagine a single-family neighborhood with 3 townhouses, garage under. If it was next to me, I'd be
Problem with
mad.
that.
I just think, Michael, that I don't think that what you're envisioning is going to happen at the scale that you're worried about. I think you won't get a whole bunch of townhouses popping up in the middle of faculty neighborhood.
Totally.
I just
No, 'cause
don't
you'll have
see that
existing
that
All
will
day.
happen.
But so if it's going to happen.
I don't think that that's going to happen.
Oh, well, it certainly could. You have
Sure.
a lot, whatever it is, half acre, and you decide I could fit 3 or 4 townhouses. The cheapest way to do it is they're all fronting the street and they're all garage under, and that does not fit in a single-family neighborhood. That's exactly the reason that you
So-
have form-based code. You know, the point is if
And
you.
that gets me into the confusion, because what you just laid out, 1 and 2 conflict with each other. We're saying, make the building perpendicular to the road, but your front entrance has to face the road.
No, or
Right.
perpendicular. So it's perpendicular. The driveway is on the
Parallel.
side, and the garages you don't see from the street. That's
So
perpendicular
how
to
do
the street.
how do all 3 units get their front door facing the street in that
Well,
scenario?
that's a good point. So 2 should be clarified.
And,
Yeah.
and in a conversion,
Yeah.
you have to have more flexibility because it could be all over the place if you're taking an older house and converting it.
I saw a commercial development, I think it was out west, where it was like a park, a shopping center. They made all the buildings have their parking on the other side of the building from the streetscape. So it didn't clutter up the whole area as though it was one great big parking lot with some buildings stuck in it.
That was the one, Sophie Banner Drive, they did a pretty good job with like the townhouse, the way they designed it. Like the entranceways were kind of from the side. It wasn't like they had 3
Yeah, they had
doors
some
sitting
from
there.
the side.
And then they had the parking off to like a side lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And
What a
so
difference.
it kind of
Right.
preserved the streetscape and it broke it up. It wasn't like what Michael's saying, it's like you didn't look at like this building that had 3 garage doors sitting there or a lot sitting in front of it. The lot was off to the side and the building kind of,
So they don't need to
It
be
looked
in
nice.
the back of the building, but they can be beyond
Also,
this, to
4
the
garage
side.
doors is not going to be particularly
Well,
attractive
garage
if,
either.
under,
You might as well
no,
have the
people-
cars in
it
front.
really
of the
depends
garage.
what can fit on your lot.
and it really will
agree.
configure, because you also have to have the road going in there, but if you have your parking in the back, you will have entrance into the building from the back.
Yeah, or you have, I think as Al's saying, you turn your row houses 90 degrees, you have a driveway, and, you know, you don't see, it's very, very efficient.
Yeah.
That way.
But if you have a lot, some lots, a developer might not want to do it that way. But as Paul said, we just need to clarify the language in 2.
Yeah.
And everybody knows in New Hampshire, you don't use the front door. That's
You use the door your
tradition.
car leads you out of
No,
into.
just
That,
the traditional house,
and that-
never use the
But
front.
at least you have a front door.
That is.
It's,
Yeah, but
okay, what you just said
I
though, you're saying, nobody from out of state come
no,
here.
I'm just saying
Totally.
that's the traditional home, house
Right,
in
it
New
depends.
Hampshire.
I use my front door, it's the only way
It's
in.
just the culture.
If I park
Oh,
in
but
the
at least we
front.
have a front door.
I only have a
We
front,
always decorate
Alright.
it and everything, but we never use it.
Okay.
I use mine all the time.
So
The Fuller Brush man uses.
number 3, go back to garage doors. So number 3, I go back to Pearly Lane. Pearly Lane, all the garage doors are recessed
Exact.
forward of the front of the house.
Yeah.
Towards the road. And you look fine.
Well, it looks okay because it's a new separate development and the whole thing is done that way. This is written, it could be a new development or it could, in many cases, be infill. So if you imagine where you have an existing nice single-family street.
No.
And somebody is putting a duplex with, so this is just saying the garage doors may not, but this is saying the second sentence. Duplexes may, but you can't have 2 of them in the middle. And,
Again, that's what Pearly Lane has.
well,
It's because you don't like it, Mike.
No, you're-
ask
at
people in
this point, you're-
single-family neighborhoods, ask people in single-family neighborhoods and
Well,
architects and designers who have been working on this stuff for years about how to do a mixed-use neighborhood and how to allow for missing middle to work in an existing single-family neighborhood. And if you don't have some pretty strict standards, which are not difficult to meet, these are not unreasonable. They're just saying to a developer, in this neighborhood, it's a single-family street. You can have 2, 3, or 4, but there's some rules you must follow so that your building does not stand out and is not objectionable to the existing single-family neighborhood. So these are not asking a lot to accomplish that.
Yes,
Hold on,
it is.
hold on,
There are
hold
two
on.
things. There are 2 things, though, that this actually does that can make or break the construction. One, it's effectively stealing space that would normally be the residential. I'm going to keep using Pearly Lane because it's a really good scenario for the way our town has with its wetlands. You got a creek in the back. If you push the garage 10 feet further behind the house, you're in the creek.
oh, that's a
Not
different, that's a separate.
Okay, you have, I mean, or you're stealing the living space from the building itself. The other thing you're doing is that extra space for the width of the driveway, you're just adding that much more impervious surface to the lot. For minimal reasoning of aesthetics.
A lot of duplexes, people want their own driveway. Well, no, if you have if the garage doors are in the middle,
don't
you're
have
still going to have a wide driveway or 2 driveways. If they're on the ends,
Well,
you're still going to have 2 driveways. There may be situations, I mean, how often is there going to be a creek in the back or a wetland and
Well,
we're
let-
In
constraining
this
it?
town, we got creeks
Well-
everywhere.
But,
Can I
yeah,
make
hold
a
on,
suggestion? Can you
you
just,
go.
I would just say, so put a star next to garage doors and put a star next to parking, because those are gonna be contentious.
Right.
Okay.
I moved down to number 8, which is siding consists of clapboard using any material except vinyl with a maximum width of. If I brought that to my committee, I would be murdered. So please take that out.
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
agree. I agree
It's
with
like
that.
that. I don't.
Which one?
Do not like.
I could live with that in a historic district,
Yeah.
barely. I don't even like it in the historic
Yeah.
district.
Which
but-
one are you talking about?
8.
Number 8.
Take 8 out, please. It's like you
Siding
will.
shall
All right.
we gotta take
Take-
that.
All right, we'll remove 8.
off.
We want
Remove 8.
asbestos siding.
What?
Now we're not-
Asbestos.
now
Well,
we
that's
can only
nothing,
find about
that's fine,
7.
yeah, hardy board.
Traditional.
People, okay, everybody.
What's the goal here? You know,
Yeah,
is
exactly.
it affordability or
What
is it
is-
aesthetics?
Yeah,
There are-
you gotta look at affordability, you gotta look at, and the thing about the garages that are up to next to each other, you may not like the look of that, but the reason why it exists is because people that live in those units find that very positive, because they are not living, they don't have a common wall. They don't want to have their wall up against somebody else's garage. They
Well,
want, because and that's a reality. People prefer that, and it may not be aesthetically pleasing to you, but for a lot of us, we don't really give it a lot of thought. I
I'm
don't
trying
care.
to make that multifamily look as much as possible like a single family.
Yes.
And we've got to take the parking into consideration. You know, I think it wouldn't hurt to have a little vegetation between the street and the building, like
Yeah.
a lot of other single-family houses.
You already have that for many homes.
Instead
yeah.
of having, you know,
Well, the site plans require foundation plantings for,
oh, not just
Structures like this.
Well,
between
for
the
3 and
road
4.
and the foundation.
There's no site plan for duplexes, but for 3 and 4.
And then can I work, since,
Let's make this
I think,
work.
again, I think
What?
that.
Let's make it work.
We can. I think the
Yeah.
garage and the parking need work, and they're kind of time sinks doing it. I said 8 is an easy one because you can just cross it
It's
off.
gotta go.
I think 7, you're gonna run into some people saying you're over-regulating, but exactly what, I mean, to Judith's point, what you're kind of saying is you want, I think you summed it up really well, you want your single family, you want your duplex or multifamily to look like what was in the neighborhood. So I think that's fine.
As similar to the original house.
Yeah, and
or
then
the houses,
6,
yeah.
what is 2.5 story, how tall is it?
So it's not like a triple decker.
Yeah,
which
how
is-
tall is that? Like, two story?
That'd be 25 to 30 feet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of consistent
Depending on
what we
your
had. I just say
Yeah.
height, in terms of height, rather than saying you can only have buildings that don't exceed 2.5 stories, just say the height is consistent with,
It's the best way to deal with it is by number of stories, not height. Because
Okay.
it's the number of stories that
then it's
defines the
consistent
character.
with the number of
When you-
stories in
when
the
you have a
neighborhood.
slope-
However you want to, whether you want to do
Well-
height or stories, that it's
Yeah.
consistent with what's in the neighborhood.
Well, but most single-family neighborhoods are 2.5 stories is standard. And this says, you want this to be non-discretionary. So we don't want to have
Yeah.
language like consistent. But 2.5, I mean, who's going to object to 2.5 stories? If you want a 3 full-story multifamily, that's pretty big. That's going to stand
It's
out.
fine. I just want clarification.
So if you have your parking underneath, is that a story?
potentially.
No.
It depends, it
Because
really,
it jacks the building up,
idea,
right?
well, that-
It's not habitable space,
But
but there's
but
sometimes.
Okay.
architecturally,
Oh, we
it's-
should,
That depends.
SB
Whether it's a-
283.
well, maybe it should really just
raised
be,
basement type thing. or
it
not.
really should be 2.5 stories. I'm not,
Yeah.
at least 2.5 stories to the street side. If you have a walkout basement in the back, I think that's fine. So 2.5 stories in the front and side,
Okay,
meaning a walkout is fine in the back.
Develop,
so hopefully your
Face
land is
back.
sloping away from the street, not up from the street.
well, it will
Yeah,
depend.
you know,
You can build space behind that garage, even if it's
Yeah.
flat, and then
Yeah.
that can be habitable space, and then,
Oh, well, yeah.
yeah, so
It'll
it
be
may not exceed,
underground, though.
right,
It'll
2.5
be a
stories
basement
on the
space.
front or the side.
depending upon how you build it though. All right.
Well, all right, yeah, so that's good. I mean, that's a good first discussion.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think Judith's statement, you want these to look like the you want them to conform
You
with
want
your
the
existing
neighborhood.
neighborhood. That's the goal. And we can mess around, again, we can mess around with the parking and all that and get, I think.
And depending upon the neighborhood is really,
Yeah.
if you've got to look like your neighborhood, then you have a higher bar maybe if you're on Baghdad, or, you know what I mean? Because you got to look like the neighborhood, so you can't, you know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing, is each street, almost becomes its own neighborhood,
Yeah,
right? Because
Yeah.
Oyster River Road's completely different from Faculty Lane.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, very different,
All right,
Yeah.
even though it's
Yeah.
the same neighborhood.
but it's not the same type of buildings.
So I'd be really, again, as Michael was
And-
saying, we gotta be really consistent about using things like consistent with the neighborhood.
totally,
because-
that's what we use.
Because Madbury Road, where I am, is very different than Baghdad Road,
Yeah, I mean, well, that,
or even
again,
Emerson.
you pick it, height or stories is fine, just say what it is, because it really is, what you already said is that is pretty consistent.
I think what will happen is that any plans brought in especially for our dense residential areas that are, in town, the plans, when you look at it, even at the administrative level for a building permit, it will be like, well, yeah, that looks like
Is
Yeah,
there,
where
'cause-
you are.
is there any ability to have design standards that the planning board can oppose, if you don't do this, you don't get your permit? And with these are these what you would call design standards? And can we, I mean, is there any wiggle room for saying if you want this, then you gotta have?
You could allow departure by, dare I say it, conditional use?
No,
No.
Special
Can't do that.
exception. If
No,
there
because
only some
that
way to
invites
wiggle
everybody
it-
in the neighborhood to come in
If
and
there's
try to
some
design
way
your
to
house for
wiggle it
you.
around so that you
That's
can
not
get
fair.
the look that you want.
So the hard part about
That's the idea of basic, they're
You-
basic form-based, but they're not real detailed.
Yeah,
So
under
your
best
mass
case-
of your building and your
And how
parking.
about things like the landscaping?
The best case scenario, Judith, to your point, is like the patterns design that is a more refined version of this that Lebanon is using. They actually use housing opportunity money to have architects draw up
Yeah.
some designs. And so in that case, you're like, okay, we have 6 designs to choose from. And if you pick that design, then it's by right. You go right through. It's like you go get your building permit and go. The difficulty we've had, and we could do that certainly in Durham.
That's a good approach.
It's the best approach, actually. I don't know where we'd come up with the money to do it, but
Copy theirs.
so my take is we could so the best
Definitely.
case
Reinvent it.
the best case scenario is to do it
It was
that way.
HOA money, right? The
Yeah.
state should.
Copy theirs.
But we
yeah.
don't, if we don't, we could certainly copy Lebanon's. I would say that's the best way to do it. If we, this exercise that Michael is doing is if you don't have any money, can you come up with a generic form to come up with? And I think what we've already hit is the limitations of the generic form. It's like coming up with an actual design that works in your community is best. And if we had any money to do that, we should. But
Or we can copy stuff. If anybody,
can.
just feels like Googling, we can get images and we can just copy the images.
I think or if we can find other municipalities that have actual designs and they'll allow us to utilize.
Oh, they will allow, we can
Then-
take anything.
If
That's
they
what
take
use
anything,
public
they
money,
don't
they
own it.
have to.
There's no
Also,
proprietary thing.
They don't copyright it.
It's public.
Well, unless the designer does.
Unless the designer says, okay, I'm just like, I think, that would be really well worth grabbing some of that rather
Yeah.
than just some generic stuff, because I think we'll find some good designs that way.
Yeah, if it's a
also-
design, we probably would need permission from the designer,
For
or
sure.
the
I think,
town. Maybe the town can
In
do it.
Lebanon, though, it's become public.
Yeah,
We can
I
ask them.
I'm sure the
I have
town
the
of
notes.
Lebanon would let us, and they probably own it, so.
They
We
would
can
have
ask,
to.
Yeah.
one of the representatives, the ranking member of the municipal and county government who I worked with is a representative from Lebanon and was pushing the housing patterns and the partners in housing, so I'll ask, can we steal their designs?
Oh, yeah, any
We
municipality is happy to let you copy all their stuff. It's, and I think whoever designed their images, the town of Lebanon probably owns them. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
We'll ask, we can
Yeah.
ask.
I'd
All right.
also like to go up and down streets with pictures of parking in front and parking behind.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
well,
yeah, so this
Okay.
was all just informal discussion?
Yeah.
Thank
No vote, but I hear you, I got the notes.
That was
got
good.
some notes
Thank
we
you.
could,
Thank
yeah,
you.
and
This
then
was very
our next meeting will be June 9th. And,
I didn't.
All right.
So you could vote on something if next meeting
we
if
need,
you want.
yeah, we need to try to get people in that day.
So, actually, let me talk to you two after the meeting, because I've got the quorum, the RSA pertaining to quorums open right now.
Oh,
And it actually says, so, and what I'm reading says
we don't apply. But there might be something on the town, because we're a task force of the town council,
Yeah,
right?
And we're advisory.
So we might have to look at the town council's subcommittee / task force rules. But here it says, meetings of and it lists a whole bunch of the land use commissions, which we are not, need to have a majority membership to make a quorum. Okay?
Majority.
But we're not a land use, and it specifically lists which ones are. If we don't fall into that list, we don't even need a quorum. We just might want to have rules of procedure that say we need at least 4 people.
Trouble.
Yeah. Can
Travis is the next person here.
No, can we
You
run
and I
that
can
through?
get together.
Can we run,
So that would be, that actually I think becomes the question that we need to ask is, are we held to a quorum at all?
What RSA is that?
That is 67310.
let's see if we can, yeah, because it can be, we all, most of the time have 4 here, but sometimes we don't have 5.
Well, we could even write simple bylaws saying that's the quorum.
I just think when we're gonna do this, can we get the quorum?
What?
Well, that's the,
Because we're gonna probably be, I think we're pretty ready to do this, aren't we?
Yeah, we should
Yeah,
have
so
it.
let's
We could
get
do
a
it for the
quorum.
next one.
and let's make sure, let's make sure we get a quorum,
We
or
have
at least
to.
let's make sure that
Whatever
don't
that-
need one.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Okay, so, since we don't have a quorum, I'm not gonna ask for a motion to adjourn, but I am just gonna, informally end this meeting. Does anybody have